Well, I just thought I'd share what I did last year in case somebody else is in the same situation. I had to kind of gear up for some chainsaw milling last year. I could not find anybody to mill this gorgeous cherry tree I had, and my 83-year-old neighbor was here a couple years ago saying, he said, if that tree ain't hollow, it probably will be soon. And you got to respect that wisdom. He's been around a long time to get that wisdom. And so I thought, well, and it was already starting to lose some branches. So I went ahead and milled it down. In fact, this is it right here. This is the one of the logs I built in the kiln, and I'll talk about this kiln later. It's really kind of cool. It's got the motorized lid. It's got its own website, solar powered. But this is not what I want to talk about today. This is going to be a future project here. So anyway, this is what I came up with. Now I did a lot of looking online, and Grandberg had some nice products. Other people had nice products, and expensive, good. There's good and bad for everything I thought, and I really liked that what people were doing with these rails. And I thought, well, I kind of like that idea. Of course, it required a nice flush cut, which I have on this end anyway, not so much on the other end. And I thought I had some concerns about things, and so I thought I'm gonna go this method. I still use the rails, but I came up with these little rail holders, and I wanted to make sure they're fast, easy, and accurate. Um, Accurate is something I am was kind of concerned about because I've done enough cabinet making to know the power of a joiner. I mean, if you're gonna saw something with a bow, well, you're gonna rip something with and you're gonna transfer that bow right to it, and it curves. You want a nice straight line because every cut you make after this is gonna follow that same curve. So I came up with this system because I think it's better. Now again, Asterix better, I don't know. This is the only system I've ever had, so but it sure worked well for me. So what I did here is how I made these things. I set up my rails in my shop. Okay, these are the rails right here, the same distance that I was going to use them on the log. And this is going to be my welding jig, and this is what I use. And I just cut up these angle iron pieces I had here. This is the double one. This is slightly longer than the most of them I have. Um, and these railings here, these square tubing, I went to my local steel mart and they had a bunch of cutoffs. I mean, this is a big place where you can buy 24-foot pieces of steel if you want, but they had a bunch of 12-foot cutoffs, and so I bought three of these. So I got two 12-foot rails for my big system, so to speak, and I cut one of them in half for a smaller 6-foot system. And these double ones here that have two screws, and I'll talk about that coming up. That is so I can join the 12-foot and the 16. So like if I ever, I can't see how I would, but if I ever want to do an 18-footer, I could. Once I got the angle iron just kind of welded together, I welded this 1-inch square stock on top of it. Um, Then what I did to the bottom of it, I actually welded on some. This is just 1 inch by quarter-inch flat stock. Pre-drilled the holes, and these holes aren't tapped; they're just drilled through, and so a quarter-inch bolt will go through there. Now I use tap bolts for these because tap bolts are threaded all the way up, and so they give you a lot of good range. And now what I did, all these red things you see, here's one here I have kind of hard to see, but this is 3D printed up, which I just undersized the hole, so to speak, for the nut, and I just press fit these little nuts into the plastic, and its only purpose is to keep the nut from spinning. I wanted this to be easy. I didn't want to have to hold a wrench and then use my screw gun to adjust these things. And so the main purpose of all these holders here are just to hold nuts in place. Now I did have to use friction nuts on the outside too, because I found out the vibration was enough to work them free at times. So, but since I switched to friction nuts, I've never had a problem. I would recommend, though, however, using hardened steel or a higher grade steel for the nuts than I got here, because sometimes if I bottom out too quickly, I'm not paying attention. Um, I can go ahead and bend these. I've actually bent a couple of the nuts. So how this is actually installed, this is the video I got here of how fast this is to get started. And again, everything's a 1/4 inch or 7/16 nut size, and so I don't have to switch back and forth. Even my tap bolts, or my lag bolts I should say here, are the same size. Now what I'm doing here, I'm just sort of roughing it on. You don't want to use a great big long lag bolt because you don't want to cut it with your saw. It would not be good. But really, I found out these are so stable that you really only need to get in the wood an inch or so, and you've got a nice stable system. And I got it set up I can use two. I just been using one because they're just that good. Again, pretty fast to do. I'm just not tightening up too much because I'll do my final adjustment once I get my beam on this. Yeah, I thought I'd just throw my hat in the ring and show what I've done if anybody's looking at this. But so the next one here is, let's go on. Next one here is, I just put my level across. I got my beams already in the sides now. Now I can go ahead and level up. Because you got 4 bolts, you can actually get front and back and side to side, and it makes it really quick to adjust it what you want. Now this is a bit shorter log. I'm only using 2 of the supports. Anything longer than 6 feet though, I'm going to use 3 supports. And there's a real good reason why I do that, which I will show you my experiment on. But yeah, tighten everything up, and then kind of recheck when you're done. If it's not, you can certainly adjust if you need to. Do the other end. So it's a pretty fast system. Now I did not want to show you the entire milling of the entire log. That's too close to watching paint dry, I think. But however, starting and ending, I think, are the most dangerous periods, because you got especially when you're ending, you're tired, you're kind of working there on your hands and knees, it's awkward. So this is why I like longer rails, because it gives you kind of a takeoff ramp, so to speak, that when your saw exits, you can set there until everything winds down a little bit. So this is a video. I don't usually have my saw running, but I went around to turn the camera on. So this is a smaller log I had of that same cherry tree. It had about, I don't know, 16 feet before the first branch. It was a big cherry tree, 27 inches in diameter on the base of this tree. But this is not that big log. So I did print my own wedges here, 3D printed. And I've already got them on Thingiverse. So if anybody wants them, actually, I'm kind of surprised how many people have been downloading that. But they've been working really good. I can just jam a bunch in my pocket so they're easy to get. And this is why, like I said, I like this extra length, something to hold the saw up a little bit, come down to stop, and a lot safer. So this is the wedges. Actually, OT and AT is my channel on Thingiverse. I do print them in 100%, and these little nubbies I printed on them, they were just fantastic. Now I've not added these yet. I'll go ahead and add the rest of these 3D printed things to that web page or to that channel, or come up with a new one. So, but I'll add them ASAP. Now the question that came up to me, I can remember as a child, I was at a science museum, and I'm not sure where it was, and I was awful small, but they had a railroad rail set up in this science museum, and it was a big hunk on railroad rail, mounted, and you had a piece of thick plastic on top with a hole in the middle, and you could push your finger down through that hole and watch the gauge move of how much your finger pressure would bend that railroad rail. I can remember as a kid pushing that just as hard as I could and watching it go up to, I think it was 5/millionths of an inch or something. I'm not exactly sure, but that's probably what it was. But I was like, wow, my finger can bend this rail. So I started thinking about, if I can do that to a railroad rail, and a lot of these systems I see using these square rails are only supported on the ends, nothing in the middle. That's why I made my system so you can support it in the middle, more than one if you want. I made a lot of these supports. But I was just curious how much sag was happening on these beams. And so I set this thing up here in my shop here. And I have a 661 steel saw with 36-inch bar. Now this thing's not even full of gas, doesn't have the oiler on it, so it's not even as heavy as it could be. And this is a pretty heavy duty. I think it's 3/16 was what they told me the size was it. So it's a pretty strong, heavy beam, or the square stock tubing. There's inches and millimeters if your trigger. So anyway, I went ahead and put about my gauge on this here too. This is my runout gauge. The only one I have. So I had to use it. Um, and I got it adjusted, so I wanted to see how much bow or sag would happen when I set my saw on this. If I was just supporting this at the end of my log. So this is the video of it. This is me just tapping the bar. You know, now there's 100 increments all the way around on this here too, about 0.0005. And it only has now what I'm doing here, I'm picking up the whole bar, chainsaw assembly, everything, and setting it on top. And fortunately I had 3 revolutions because I needed all 3 of them to measure this. So that's just by putting on the weight of the chainsaw and the attachment. So then I got thinking, well, I wonder how much these bars are heavy. I thought, well, how much is the weight is going to be sagging down of just a bar sitting it there? So I went ahead and set this back up again. Now these horses you see here, these are the saw horses I use to do an edge cut. I got another simple edge trim mill. I made a lot of 2x4s in my kiln. You saw back there. It actually had a bunch of cherry 2x4s, and I made a bunch of cherry 2x4s for that. And this is the system I use. I built a couple outriggers on my sawhorses to hold the cutoff pieces, and it works just fine. But anyway, what I did here, I set one of the beams up here. I tried to get as straight as I could, find a straight one. They're all straight. And I set a line up on it. And what this line is, it's about a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch of sag. I was surprised that it had this much sag, but these bars are supported and they're heavy. So I thought, well, if I have almost 1/8 of an inch sag, and I'll call that 0.15 to make it easy, the saw weight itself, well, it's 3 revolutions, 100 times per revolution. That's another 0.15. So right now we're 1/3 of an inch. And if I put oil, gas, and of course when I'm running this thing, I got some weight of my own, controlling it, pushing down, driving it across, hands around it. I'm probably guesstimating that I have probably a 1/2 inch of bow I'm cutting in this supposedly straight line. So that's why I made this system with these extra supports. You can put more supports if you want, but I thought, well, if I support it halfway through, that's fine. However, I decided just to see how much it did. So I went ahead and took my 6-foot railings. This is the smaller system I had. Reset up everything on this time on my table. It's a little more bouncier. And anyway, what I came up with, I'll show you the video, but it basically was about 50 increments of the 0.0005 or 0.025 inches. So it doesn't really move too much. I also tried the string line with the see how much sag. It had no sag at all, which I was kind of shocked. So I flipped the thing over to make sure it was not bent, and same thing. So yeah, if you're supporting this in the middle, you can really reduce the bowing of each cut. So yeah, this is me getting smart right here. I must stop this because the first couple times I tried this, I almost knocked the camera over, tripod and everything. I finally got smart and realized, just set the saw up there, start the video, and then take it off. That's what I did. So we're here 25, 26, which is really 50 increments I got here. So it wasn't too much deflection of the weight on this. So this is why I think this system is really good when it comes to giving you a nice straight line. Like I talked about that joiner, you want to establish a good starting straight level cut, because all the other cuts are coming off of that. So and I'm cutting 5/4 here. This what I cut in the kiln here. It's mostly all 5/4. I got a couple of beams in here, but I do a lot of more cabinet type of work. And these are the shorter logs I used just kind of to try. And I know I probably need a little bit better system to get my logs up But it's actually a little more stable than it really looks here. However, like that big log of 27 inches, there's no way that thing was going to be hoisted up. So that one I did have to cut hands and knees type of thing. But I I made this rig for my side by side originally just to hold my pole saw, and it has worked so well for hauling these rails around. It will haul both the 12 footers you see here as well as the 6 footer. So that made my life a lot easier. I am kind of impressed how well these chainsaw mills do work. I fully recommend going that route. Um, if you're curious about this top rigging I made for my side-by-side, search my OT and AT channel on YouTube and you'll find a video of how I did that. It's been a real good thing, especially for this pole saw. There's no way I could just haul this thing around where I needed it. Now the last little bit of my last tip I have of the day is that on my 661 saw, um, it has a pressure relief to start it, otherwise you just never get it pulled. And what I was doing originally and causing problems is that I'd take the pressure release off, start it up, and let it just idle to warm up before I started using it. And then when I go back to it to use it, it was like and stop, flooded or something, and it wouldn't start for 20 minutes or so, and it was just a real pain in the butt. And it finally dawned on me that what I was doing, the pressure release is designed to start it, not run it. I'm sure I was getting some of the carburation was off or something. But the minute I realized that, now what I do, I will take the pressure release off, start it, just give it a little gas that will knock off the pressure release. Then it starts idling as it should be. And then when I start to use it, it just works perfectly. So I didn't get a lemon. It was just my understanding of how I'm using it. So, well, anyway, there's my hat in the ring for this particular system. So, if you're looking for something to do, this was a real nice one. And also, you can get these bolts in longer ones. I've had to use longer ones a couple times. You have to use, of course, longer lag screws in too. But I had one log quite a taper, and the way I wanted to cut it, I couldn't do it with the shorter bolts, so that worked extremely well. So anyway, this system has been working great for me. If you're looking for something, well, consider this. So anyway, have a good day.